Hey guys, George Mesa, Third Eye Edify podcast. And I am so excited to bring on somebody that I met by making a podcast and we have become friends since. I have a feeling almost all of my audience already knows him. He may not need an introduction, but I'd love for him to introduce himself and give us a taste of what he's all about. Every single time we talk, I learn at least 10 to 15 things. It's an incredible world with you in it, my friend, and I cannot thank you enough for being here and sharing your wisdom. I have a feeling this conversation is going to go to places that we somehow didn't get to yet, even though we've been chatting about the topic for almost 2 months now. So yeah, please welcome Slick Dissident to the show and go for it, man. Give us a little taste of what you're all about and where we can find you and stuff.
Thank you, my friend. It is such an honor to be here. I'm so excited. In episode number 47, I got to tell you, man, it was 47 was my first episode with the spiders. I got the zinkiness with the 47, Whoa. the number of the silver. Wow. But yeah, it's a total pleasure to be here. You know, the universe has been nudging us consistently today in our personal weaves. Dawned on you to tell me about the fact that your last name is Mesa, which is a table. Right. And the table has just been speaking to me like prolifically, and it's so profound. I love it. And I'm honoring that call to come here and put everything on the table.
There we go. Bringing it full circle. Beautiful, man. Beautiful. Yeah, I'm very curious to hear more about the table talk we had just earlier today, as a matter of fact. So hopefully we can get to that because you made me think of, as usual, you made me think of a few things that I definitely did not think of. And it relates to entertainment and all the narrative that we're given in every direction. And the Panama Canal, which will be relatively the topic of this conversation, is no exception. The impetus for this is, well, this is a long time coming. For those keeping score at home, I've been waiting to bring you on this show, and I've been waiting for the right topic. I thought of several things. We even messaged back and forth about, oh, should it be this? Should we do this? And they were all good ideas. Anything's a good idea, really. But this one struck me that I had to bring you on for this because I was thinking about North America, South America, which you pointed out to me, and I didn't even think of that, is NASA, NASA. That's unreal right there. I didn't even think of that. And maybe we can get into them later. But the Panama Canal can easily be looked at, and now after further research, I'm seeing that it's very clear, it can easily be looked at as an umbilical cord that was intentionally cut, severing the life force from mother to child. And I think just that alone is already wetting the whistle for a very long talk about all kinds of things, the stars, history's mysteries, so many other things, physical anatomy. I'm absolutely finding connections to female anatomy. So just giving you guys a taste, because there is going to be a part 1 and a part 2 here, a free side and an exclusive side. So be ready to follow us there because it's going to be an incredible talk. So any thoughts about the whole idea before we jump into some of the ideas we had planned out here?
Yes. Quite a few thoughts all simultaneously, but you know, the sacred rivers being an umbilicus is so pronounced. It is so utterly pronounced. There's a great amount of research around the basics, and the most obvious are the Mississippi to the Nile. And the fact that the Mississippi runs basically to the 30-degree parallel and the Nile picks up at the 30-degree parallel. And like yin yangs, they're flowing in each other's direction. Wow. To meet at that 30, like maybe a guitar string of some sort. You know, that band is the way it's described to us. These parallels at longitude and latitudes, I think of them as a Merkaba system. You know, that we can say a couple numbers and encode it in some way, and your thoughts go there. You know what I mean? But these rivers as umbilical cords, there's a lot of research around the actual dimensions of the Nile having sacred geometry being corresponding to 216, 6 times 6 times 6, also spelling the word TAX. And these rivers are contentious points. They're lines in the sand for wars and battles. So Napoleon conquered Egypt right there on this Nile River. Right. So these turning of tides, also cosmic events, they say that rivers flow backwards. Funny enough, the word river in septenary is 55555, so it flows backwards on itself. Wow. So there's this strange programming subtly ebbing and flowing in the back channels of our language. In these bodies of water, I think, are where a great amount of subtle energy can really be tapped into, both linguistically and numerologically, the geomancy. It's such a fascinating word, geomancy. And we'll probably get into this, but when I was young, I thought it ran east to west, and here we are researching it, and it's actually north and south, and that is kind of turns your head.
Right.
Weird.
Right. I see.
It's counterintuitive.
You're right. A lot of maps do kind of choose their own direction with how they present it. And I found a few where, Pacific was at the bottom and Atlantic on the top. And then I saw a lot of flip-flopping too. Because, where I grew up in New York, East Coast, USA, I always think of it as, Atlantic's here, Pacific's here. And I reverse it for those watching at home. But I'm now wondering too what the gematria of the word meandering is, because I know the Nile has done that. So I'm wondering I remember they said it had, because it provided the aquifer under the pyramids, right? So that Tesla copied. So I'm curious about that. So let's and speaking of that, I think it'd be worth mentioning, with the delicate nature of somehow delicate yet the most powerful thing, the oceans. They find this incredible little point in Central America, in Panama, and they're both just kind of meet there like a dam would. And just the idea that it would even be a good idea to cut through that just seems pretty crazy to begin with. It was a route, as I found. People would kind of haul all kinds of things, set it up on the donkeys. They'd meet a boat on the other side. During the gold rush, people would come from the East Coast, go there. They'd make their way. They'd find another boat. Then they'd make it to California. So it's been used for lots of different things, and it was being used. But before we get ahead of ourselves, I kind of want to go back a few hundred years to somebody who I've mentioned on my show before, maybe it was episode 6, Spelling Bee, somebody that historically he's everywhere, and somehow he's not in a lot of places at the same time, which is very suspicious to me. That's good old Christ Columbia, Christopher Columbus. And he brought Spain to the Caribbean. And then and we can talk about him all day, but I think it'd be easier to kind of move along and get to more of the swashbuckling buccaneer style of good old Henry Morgan, who I'm finding out, and I don't know how I did not know this, that he is Captain Morgan, like the rum. And there's plenty of symbolism to be made there. But one of the first things I want to mention, and actually, let's get this out of the way. They don't know his birthday, but born in 1635 and then died August 25th, 1688. So maybe we can look at those numbers and see if we find something there. He was eventually the lieutenant governor of Jamaica. And this is after all the plundering. This is after all the, contracted killings that this pirate actually went through. And something that maybe we can quickly touch on is that I specifically remember with the Iraq war at the turn of 9/11, that there was all this talk, conspiracy talk about private contractors doing some of the dirty work, or a lot of the dirty work that the Army, Navy, whatever was not doing. And these pirates were private contractors. They got a marquee, and more specifically, a marquee and reprisal, which allowed the issuer to give free rein, license to kill, essentially, on the high seas. And this is during something that I wasn't aware was named the Age of Sail, between 1600 to 1850. So they weren't allowed to attack on land, but if you're on the seas, you took what you could, and whatever you claimed was a small percentage went to the issuer, as if they claimed anything, right? But my point is that these people were all heroes from where they came from. They were breaking all their rules, but it wasn't enough for them to be vilified. They were all national heroes. We've got rum that we name after him. And he eventually did go to Panama to sack that place too. So it sort of begins the turmoil, and you use the term that I'm very interested, colonialized trauma. So perhaps we can kind of push that into the landmass that is the Panama Canal before we discuss some of the man-made elements that went into the canal itself and all of the esoteric stuff that comes with it.
Yeah, man. Yes, Captain Morgan. What a fascinating character. And turns out that name becomes like another namesake. There's a couple of other later Captain Morgans that come into play, but one thing that right away I think everybody has the visual of the icon, right?
Yeah.
We have this a picture in our mind, and he's got one leg up on that barrel, right? Conquering the barrel. Well, the one leg up so much in my mind represents the Ophiuchus, the character of Ophiuchus, who is consistently depicted as stepping off of the elliptical plane. And I've actually patterned that exact posture out to Christopher Columbus in quite a few of his paintings.
I've seen it too. Yep.
Christopher Columbus, because he's that bad boy renegade. I'll take my business elsewhere.
Yep.
That's kind of like he's selling himself off. He's self-promoting, and then he's like, no, I'll go over here and sell myself elsewhere. So that's the Ophiuchian spirit. But yeah, isn't this something? And even the tip of the sword is pointing to that heel. And this is a biblical inside joke. It goes back so far. But he's pointing at that sacred location at the heel of Ophiuchus between the scorpion's tail, the Sagittarian arrow, pointing at the heel of Ophiuchus. And if a drop of blood falls from this, it's also a pivot point for lunar standstills. There's a ton of eclipse magic around his numbers. But if a drop of blood falls off that heel, it lands on the Ara Altair, the table. The magician's table is just under the heel. So all of this sacred alignment tells a cosmic story, but they bake it into history in the coolest ways. So that's something I'm looking forward to unpacking.
Oh,
and,
wow.
And that's he's crossing a cosmic void. So crossing the Panama Canal is correspondent to this little narrow gap of opportunity that Ophiuchus, he only gets 5 degrees of the circle.
Oh, wow. I see. That's incredible, dude. I also didn't think of this until just now, but because I have a lifetime of playing music and I've done plenty of very extreme metal where you're almost expected at times to put your foot up on the monitor that's on the front of the stage and play in that way. I think anyone that I'm talking to right now can picture this, right? You're almost supposed to do it. It's like a requirement for you to look badass, right? Swing your hair around and put your one leg up. So that's interesting. And I also came across, just by researching that the NFL, the No Fun League, had banned somebody from doing the Captain Morgan stance at the end zone when he got a touchdown. And I don't know if he was on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I would not be surprised in the slightest bit, right? If he was on the Buccaneers. And that was incredible. Apparently he was getting like some funding from them. And then he claims that I had no idea they were paying people to do that. Winning stint. They actually said, if you do the Captain Morgan pose at the end zone, we'll give you money. Giving billionaires money, like what? Let's call them millionaires.
Wow,
that was, I didn't expect that. That was funny.
Yeah, so, I think that pose is I think it's very initiatory. It's I think because it's stellar. I think it's got that Masonic lineage to it, but like even that's one small step for man, that's one giant leap for mankind. I think they said that as he's coming off the ladder. And as he comes off the ladder, he's literally in the Ophiuchian pose. Now you have to forgive me. I'm jumping in between at least 4 very sacred constellations. This is so mythologically jam-packed. Because Ophiuchus, Hercules, and Sagittarius, also the scales of justice and the Scorpio of betrayal are all right here. So like the stories that are based on the stars, they're starries.
Right.
This is the point of betrayal. And so the trigger aspects, the vulnerability, all the leaves have fallen off the tree in the fall, and also the eclipse aspect. Eclipses are signified by masks. When you put a mask on, you are interfacing with the fictional realm, but you're also eclipsing your face. So all of these things are packed into this location. But I want to say this about the one small step for man.
Yeah, please.
Sagittarius has a teacup. on his hip, kind of. And that teacup is like, it makes steam if it gets hot, but it actually corresponds with the oxygen tank that the guys in the cosmic astronaut suits are wearing. Right. They're literally carrying a teacup on their back. That is signified by the teacup on Sagittarius. It's amazing how the symbols of the astronauts are just, playing with the stars. All right.
You're right. And I
get so excited.
I'm excited too, man. And trust me, there's two things I just thought of too. You mentioned how, they're not in, he may seem sort of relaxed, but he's also there is motion here. And you said the word stellar, and I'm thinking the word scalar as well. Because when you play, let's say, a musical scale, it's like climbing the rungs of a ladder as you go up do, re, mi. And I'm kind of seeing a ladder climbing element to this. I was looking to see if he was wearing some kind of heavier gloves that matched the look of his shoes, because those could kind of be like the gauntlets that the astronauts were supposedly wearing and handling very delicate cameras and stuff with, which is impossible. But what about this? I think this really gives us a little more insight. I think Captain Morgan's pretty obviously in the center pose here. You sent me this, and I had already placed it into the slides, so I'm wondering. I'm looking at his hands now more than I was when I first took the photo. He's got one finger pointing down in his right hand, and then he's got the four fingers sitting on almost on his knee. This just brings us back to torture, slaves, all these different things. He had plantations. He owned plantations, plural. So, again, national hero. We celebrate him every time we buy this rum. It's just like when you choose to vote for Disney or Netflix, when you drink that rum, you're supporting this in a certain way, and it doesn't mean you're a bad person. I'm just trying to bring awareness. That's the whole point of this damn show, is that people become more aware of every action they take and become more aware of everything they think they know about history. Because every time we look, this is what happens. Every single time we look, suddenly you've related it to so many different things that are in different centuries, and they all relate in an incredible way. And I'm trying to, slow my heart rate and keep everything nice and calm, because we're going to be flying in any second. So
it is. It's so exciting.
Yeah, go ahead. You've said some interesting things about this particular photo. Please,
yes.
Everyone at home will notice there's a table, and we had mentioned table earlier.
Yes. So the name of Panama, that city, when he invaded it, was Portobello. And in the name of the city is the table. And this table is so significant. It always will be. I believe one of the secrets of the table for the initiated has to do with Moses coming down with little tablets. Well, little tablets are tiny little tables, but they're also math tables.
Right.
And they're also on your hands. These are the mathematical dimensions of the hands. See Marty Leeds for more. But the broken tablets are actually what is hidden in our anatomy, the perfection of the anatomy. But also there's the turning of the tables, there's the exchequer, there's the Masons. They need a 90-degree surface for their rituals,
right,
so that the 90 degrees becomes kind of a universalized plane for the ritual rite of literally the rite of writing things down. And so an even table is a sign of the Masonic colonializing of the space. And I say that with an open, passionate, compassionate heart. I'm not like pointing fingers at anybody. That's such a strange trigger word. But the sign of a nice flat plane means the Masons did their work right. And isn't it funny? My words can't get away from the word right. Something about the table kind of fixates us into a paradigm. And that paradigm is the colonialization of this language that is angelic and it's geometric. Our language is so much more geometric. And that's drawing us into the realm of forms, the Platonic realm of forms, that is the heaven of the West. But in that realm of forms, you are going into two-dimensional paperwork. You're filling out the forms. And so this is a portal into two-dimensional paperwork, the papacy. But Morgan is on the end of the barrel. And when you have a life review, when somebody points a gun at you, you have your heart stops beating. He is Mr. Bad Guy at the end of the barrel, right?
Wow.
And there's a super subconscious knife floating over his head. Can you see the subliminal knife?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's pointing at the man.
Yep.
And I I see this as Morgan's reputation precedes him, and he has been his mythology is so domineering that this man is seeing daggers. When the man looks at Morgan, all the man sees is daggers coming out of Morgan because his reputation precedes him. So this is psychological domination. You know, that's what that dagger is kind of saying to me.
I see. Maybe a little.
And it's also got the scorpion
too.
Yeah, dude. Yes. Yeah, you're right. There's some Damocles in there. He's got something over his head. So he's got to do this. It's just business. Don't take it personal. Great call, the Damocles. That's a big thing right now. They just locked down the world with some Damocles on everybody, right?
Damn. Yep. And then they said, don't look up at their next movie. So yeah. Whoa. You know, again, just trying to not be giddy and giggling the whole time because this is unreal. You know, you're saying that you're right. We're writing with our right hand, and the drawer is drawing us in almost to be contained within the drawer of his or her will. And I find that sometimes paintings can actually, they don't captivate you, they actually capture you sometimes. I found that in, you know, yeah, I'm maybe not even an ex-nerd. I'm a nerd, sure. I had 5 different video game magazine subscriptions when I was younger. You know, lucky me, I was an only child, okay? I needed reading material. So I was completely captivated sometimes by the image of just one screenshot of a game that I couldn't wait for, that was months from release, and opening the pages, I would just be completely sucked in. An image that I often see lately, especially the TV, the hand comes out of the TV and grabs your face, brings you in, you know, stealing your light, of course. You know, one other thing I wanted to throw in that came up, because it's frustrating at the very least, right? The Isthmus of Panama, which was also called the Isthmus of Darien, which I didn't know about that. Doesn't sound like a very localized name. Speaking of the colonialized trauma, it was, and as I looked it up, it was thought to have been formed around 3 million years ago by volcanic activity. But this is, of course, according to good old Henry Fairfield Osborne Sr., who was a eugenics advocate, a known eugenics advocate, paleontologist, and president of the American Museum of Natural History for 25 years. So I'm not surprised, at the very least, right? How convenient. But this, coupled with the theory of continental drift, is another element where, you know, they bring something into the consciousness before they do some more pillaging. They literally raped and pillaged the land itself with this canal. And I think, you know, little things like this always pop up. There's always somebody 1850-ish coming around and saying what they want about something, and you have to believe in. You got to believe in all the things they believe in. You got to believe in evolution. You got to believe in all these other theories. I won't name them all now. I think we've already named quite a few, as a matter of fact. Any thoughts about that? Any thoughts about the, you know, and let it go wherever it wants, but this particularly, that some, you know, that we're even listening to eugenics advocates at this point about anything.
Yeah, man. Yes. Somebody described Darwinism as a self-fulfilling philosophy. And I think there are a great many self-fulfilling philosophies out there, and so a lot of them are beneficial and probably very healthy. But the Darwinism thing it's gotten out of hand. It's really dangerous. Charles Darwin. We have another King Charles is coming into play right now at a very crucial time when a lot of people have a manufactured drastic opinion of humanity in general.
Right.
And here comes another King Charles to reinforce this idea that we all have to be crabs in a bucket at their beck and call. So King Charles III, no less. And And a lot of these social contracts that we're still kind of stuck on, and we're all catching up on, we're doing our homework to learn about these social contracts, that these tar babies that keep getting us in.
Yeah.
They follow the bloodline of the Charles. You know, King Charles I lost his head. Then sovereignty was dissolved unto the people, and then they issued writs of reprisal. Prize law was launched onto the masses. Milton's Paradise Lost pops off. The Leviathan pops off. Right now, there's an oil field in the Middle East called the Leviathan that's going to be a hot spot. The Leviathan is Thomas Hobbes' work on the social contract. So the social contract is on the burner presently. So these words and these names have a long legacy of social engineering. And I think that's really the important part, is that we hear these pings, these buzzwords,
right.
But they go, some of these buzzwords are more important than others, I think. They have a longer history. And the Leviathan is a good, prize law is a very important one. The fact that right now, the Magna Carta is not what people think it is. Like if a lot of people are about to have that Christmas dinner conversation, the Magna Carta might need a couple sprinkled into, if we're going to seed consciousness of our loved ones, the Magna Carta might need to be looked at, because we're in the age of the year 10,050 something when the Magna Carta was put in place. And so, yeah. We're in international waters in a fascinating way. So I want to name one more character who's in with this pirate, this writs of reprisal and issuing piracy on the open seas.
Right.
His name is Hugh de Groot. And Hugh de Groot is, he's called the Mozart of international law. And I think a lot of what's going on with the birth certification and the writs of reprisal, the Stamp Act, the Impression Act. Right now, we got all these people going across international looking for paperwork that will justify their life, and they're gonna put them in conscription. They're gonna give them a gun and give them here. I'll give you a piece of paper if you go kill these people for me.
Yeah, if you live, you get citizenship.
Yes, this is fascinating times. But the history of it is crucial because it threads to Panama. It threads to the Mexican Civil War, and it threads to Panama and what happened there. Strangely enough, these are the seeds, the recipe for revolution for Mexico were the seeds that grew into, over time, turned into the Espionage Act today. And so that's going to be an ancient whip that's going to come cracking any day now. They make people uncomfortable, so they have to make these life-altering decisions, move around in the world, and then they start changing the laws, moral relativity, and pull the rug out from under people when they just adjusted to a huge shaking of the ant jar. So I'm really dancing around a lot of words I can't say, you know. But there are theories that they're trying to make illegal to talk about, and it has to do with immigration. It's so it's like an earthquake. It's a psychic earthquake, I think. The idea of like making people go into an immigration pattern and then swooping them up to go and do the bidding of the machine.
You know, I sense several branching paths from this moment, but I actually thought of a musical idea, because I'm kind of slapping together a book, and I'm going to be doing some seminars locally at the library like once a month about how music theory can be used to kind of change your life. No instrument required. And I was thinking about how you just talking about immigration so much, and this idea of Spain's coming to the Caribbean, England's coming to the Caribbean. It's not immigration, but suddenly everyone is living there. It's almost this forced immigration. It is occupation at the same time, though, right? And musically, there's a concept of this. If you're in a key, let's say A major, and you want to move to a new key, a new tonal center, this is called modulation. If you simply imply a different key for a moment, it's called tonicization. And it's the same idea, you know, this immigration occupation, it's either forced or you either have to go there for whatever reason, but often there's almost an entitlement. And then the conscription thing is this whole like, who's leaving their own country to fight for someone else's? It's a very surprising concept, right? But they're enticing them. We'll give you a cell phone. We'll give you a Lexus. You're good to go, you know? unreal. And a lot of times, thankfully, and some of the stories that I read, that there was a little bit of a scorched earth thing going on where they're like, they're coming, we're going to lose, burn the whole place to the ground and bring the riches on the first boat you can find, you know? So a lot of times they didn't get to plunder the entirety of the towns and areas that they were finding. So at least there's that, you know? If history's correct, we're dealing with some people that may just be myths, and it's hard to know sometimes. But I love what you said about all of that, especially public versus private, the conscription thing, and the reprisals, because earlier I mentioned the letter of marque and reprisal. This is all, it's all coming full circle. And there's a lot of the things you've talked about a lot, the law of the sea, law of the land. It goes so deep. And I think that maybe that'll be second half stuff. We'll see. We'll see if we get there. But, you know, what I didn't know, one thing I didn't know, one of many things I didn't know when I was researching this, is that Colombia and France had their stake in Panama first. And the U.S. had to kind of kick out the other ones. Well, France failed at making a canal after they had made the Suez Canal. And then Colombia, the U.S. pretty much said, look, you got to go. We're doing this canal. There's nothing you can do about it. And I've got a little story to tell about that, but about a restaurant. I used to go to a Colombian restaurant because I am half Colombian, but I think we'll get to that later. That's totally not important right now. Well, interestingly enough, and I'll leave this for you, the Panama Canal was finally finished in 1914 and started 10 years prior. That's 1 year after the Federal Reserve, right? Are we even remotely surprised? World War I is happening, essentially, and this is what we're up to. You know, we're always spending our dollars elsewhere, which is another thing to mention regarding the immigration and the conscription. They come here, people are always like, they're stealing our money, but most of our money is being thrown to the wind, and it's not really being stolen per se here. And the ones that have it just blow it on drugs and gambling. So it's not like the money here is doing us that much good either. And it's not real money anyway. It says legal tender. Can't really use it a lot in a lot of places anymore. So, oh man, there's so much to talk about there. But take whatever you want to go and ride with it. I think we're finding some very interesting threads here.
Absolutely. I'll kind of bring in some of the research around H.P. Lovecraft, and now I'm going to talk about the man, but I'm also talking about the consciousness behind him and the cult of Lovecraft, right, which is pathologically dismissive. That's their whole jam. Is it anything goes? Because this is for fun. Like, this is all cosplay. We're just having fun.
Sure,
right, but that lays an amazing amount of terrain for consistent, valid encoding of information. The Cthulhu Pantheon is legit. It is legit. It is systematically well researched, and it's based on a hermetic system, which is basically what the tarot does. Also. So that is fascinating to find out that it's not all fun and games, because I can take the same ideas through the tarot, and you know, this is a complete psychological Nexian stone or Rubik's cube. That's the best way to think of it.
Okay, yeah, wow.
It's a psychological Rubik's cube. You know, and the Cthulhu thing fits on perfectly. So let me just kind of weave this in. We've done a lot of research on the Lovecraft stories. Yep. Lovecraft, his sanctuary is in Rhode Island. Right. All roads lead to Rome, and sure enough, right along that parallel, he's on the 41st parallel at Rhode Island, and that line goes pretty much to the Vatican.
Wow.
And it also is the eye line of the Sentinel shape in the United States. Has a profiled character on the Mississippi River. His eye line is the 42nd parallel up there, about looking right at the Vatican, and it goes through a bunch of the different states. Actually spell out, like, I don't know, there's like 3 I's and some O's. The different states actually spell things on his eye line. It's an old weave of ours, but it goes through H.P. Lovecraft signed all of his papers. I am Providence. I am Providence. And so the eye of Providence is the eye of this sentinel cutting right through, going to the Vatican. And so when you cut through Lovecraft's house, and he's at this 41.7, something like that.
Right.
Which 417 is a frequency, a harmonic on the Enneagram, by the way. But anyways, his little location there triangulates to a location where Aleister Crowley summoned Cthulhu in a ritual on the exact day and the exact time. There's like a huge list of consistencies of the Crowley ritual that Lovecraft immortalized in his fiction. So they're stitching reality and fiction. The coordinates of the ritual is a 90-30 in Louisiana. That's a big thelemic number. And guess what is it 90-30 in Louisiana? Is the Panama Canal, Louisiana. So this pressure point of this numerical cipher that these guys are all into, it is pointing at this umbilicus, this pressure point, this Dantian. The Dantian is the heart center of in martial arts, in body work. And we've learned that the word Dantian in Chinese, it actually means the field of cinnabar. The field of cinnabar is actually what Dantian means. And that is where that is what Mercury comes out of this. That's red mercury. Cinnabar. Right. Cinnabar? I think I'm saying that right. Yeah, is red mercury.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they extract it and process it, and mercury comes out of that. So in the most fascinating way, this coordinate system also corresponds to a lot of anatomical pressure points.
Right.
And yeah, so this is a naval port. I mean, that kind of says it all too. You know, Louisiana is a naval port where the Mississippi goes through. Here, this Panama is another naval port. So that Dantian Hara center of like a homunculus of consciousness of some sort, it's precious.
That's incredible, dude. That's absolutely incredible. You know, the 90-30 thing really struck me when you were saying, because you had mentioned it the other day, and I did not know about this other Panama Canal. That I'm not surprised as far as where it is, because the Gulf must have some kind of impact on what's going on in that, you know, that watery area there. And a lot of travel would leave from that port to go to Panama also, because it's one of the closer spots. And I'm sure that it was just one of the more popular ports that there is in this country, no matter what. I mean, where so many different things came through there. We're told, you know, all the slaves that came through Cuba. It's just a very important place. There's a lot going on there. And much like where I'm from, Long Island, there's tons and tons of secret little spots all over the place. Rich people, a Hadron Collider. There's so many things going on there. People know that that's a place to be. Crowley knows that that was a place to be too at, Louisiana. He keeps coming up. He's just touched, whether he was there touching or not. People reference and use his work for so many different things. Almost as an excuse to do whatever they want half the time, which I'm sure you're aware of. And it's incredible, dude. It's absolutely incredible.
Yes. So in Louisiana, there is a Lafayette, Louisiana, which is L. Ron Hubbard's name. His first name is Lafayette.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The Lafitte is one of the most popular pirate names there is. And these Lafitte are leaving a trail for the treasure maps. And so all the Lafitte families have claim to treasure maps. And I'm sure L. Ron Hubbard was using that to his advantage all through the Masonic orders. There is an amazing field of research. I don't know her name. I feel horrible. I'm going to vague post this. There's a link between L. Ron Hubbard and Michael Aquino.
Really?
Somebody has a beeline on Aquino being L. Ron Hubbard's son.
Oh, really?
Fascinating. Yes. So there's Crowley, Louisiana, next to L. Ron Hubbard, Lafayette, which is basically pirate. It's like a pirate king family name, Lafayette. Right. There's one in every state. There's a Lafayette in like every state.
Yeah, you're right.
Which is a treasure hunt of its own right. Then there's a Clinton right next to these cities. These family lineages, and then it goes right by Baton Rouge. So yeah, there's a lot of crucial names kind of tethered into this nexus point around the foot of this character who is hidden in the state profiles. That's what I love. It's subliminal, and you kind of feel like you have like I don't know, you're like on the inside track when you know about these symbols and these shapes that nobody else sees. You feel guilty. It's a strange guilty pleasure to be like, to your friends, like, hey, do you see this character? And they're like, yeah, whatever, that's funny. And you're like, no, look, it's his ass is tucked in to Arkansas. His Arkansas it's in Oklahoma. The ass of the character is in Oklahoma. Texas is literally the throne of this gigantic sentinel character, and all these terms about his ass are encoded in the cities right behind the butt of the sentinel. So, these are old weaves, but they do thread right to Panama because of the pressure points, because the sacred numerology that is kind of baked into their system. Right. Of course, there's the dollar bill is a fundamental of the way the matrix works here. That's the limbic AF. Right. And then they always work in their 93s as well.
Wow.
But yeah. Can I bring them the full card to show everybody some of the about the NASA?
Absolutely.
Yeah, give me a second. You go ahead. I'll dig it out and send it to you.
All right. Cool. Yeah, I was thinking about I wrote down several things that I didn't answer from before, but maybe we're past it. But the Cthulhu rising out of the water, always making me think of Godzilla no matter what. But it's Leviathan as well, and which you had mentioned. But that kind of what makes me think of the Hydra constellation that you were mentioning. And we're going to show that later, because it's absolutely finding its way here, and in big ways. It's kind of huge, and I think you guys will agree. It's pretty much out of control. Yeah, I'll get this up here in a sec. Nice. Incredible, dude.
So incredible. Anybody who's been on the Slick Dissident adventure with me probably knows about discovering the Boötes constellation in the Thoth deck in particular. And it is a really long story of why that would be significant. I'll try to be concise. But from the Greek perspective, the poets are actually a slave. They're actually weak. They're looked down upon in a strange way because they are servitors of inspiration. Right. And I really have a hard time even speaking in this paradigm because it's just not the way I think. I think of artists as like should be elevated and encouraged and like promoted, and but the Greeks somehow they just kept the artists in a position of kind of second class. But so the Greeks aristocracy, they didn't even read to themselves. They had other people read for them. So they would have their slaves read because reading is for the weak. And this is so weird. But you have to, so this is why Boötes is for the poets. This is also, it's a void, it's a chasm, it's emptiness. And that's what's required to draw in the inspiration of the art. And so the poet is a conduit, but they have to get out of their own way. They have to evacuate themselves. You have to become to make yourself open to inspiration. So the poets are very perfectly correspondent with the Boötes void. Now, if I wanted to put like a Catholic spin or some kind of dogmatic spin on what that means, people are going to say they're opening themselves up to possession. Right. They're making themselves spiritual possessed. Well, that's what the guy on the stage is doing when he puts his leg on the amp and he's digging in. He's getting some inspiration. He's showing you his inspiration,
Yeah.
So this is contentious because some people think it's demonic, other people think it's Crowleyan, other people think it's whatever, just human nature maybe. It is. It's beautiful. So so this Boötes is important, but it's a boot. It's also a boot. And the boot is, again, with the Lafayette and the feet and the leg ends. Legendary, yes. Yes. And so these little signs and symbols, they are a bit of a treasure map for the inside click for the pirate class. But on my channel, I've discovered that Boötes is hiding out in the Fool card along his leg. There's a void, an empty space next to his thigh. And also under his arm is another very interesting shape. And these two shapes, in my assessment, are corresponding to the Boötes void in the Ara Altair constellation, because there's mind-altering substance under his elbow. And so these two shapes, when you put them on top of North America and South America, it's like a hand in a glove. It's like they found the two constellations that when you superimpose them onto the Americas, they make NASA, North America and South America. And so
I think you said,
yeah, so I put this graphic together. Yeah, you can see the Panama Canal in Louisiana is at the 90-30. You can see some of those. Maybe you can see better than I can, but you can see some of the states or some of the counties and towns I was pointing out. But at the bottom of the full card is this alligator. And it's been kind of bothering me. You know, I know about Sobek. I know about the mythology of this alligator, but he's tucked behind the boot. And I'm looking at the way that the boot of the Fool card overlaps with the alligator. And if that Boötes constellation is South America, therefore, the alligator has to be Drake's Passage. Drake's Passage is at the southern tip of South America. And Drake was the predecessor of Captain Morgan. And he was trying to outdo Frederick Drake and overstep the boundaries that Drake had laid before. So there's like a pirate passing of the torch from Drake, because they named the passage after him. And now Morgan is like, forget you guys with your Drake's Passage. I'm going to cut a Panama Canal through the middle. And we're going to blast our way all the way west and to manifest destiny. Right.
Just men always having their way, doing their thing, ruining all the beautiful things that there are. I'm, actually, look, I'm going to pull up another one that you sent me a bit, because I think this is worth, you said it and I really want to show it now, because it's worth it for sure. But
is this the Darth Vader with the 8?
No, this is, you had the continents lined up perfectly. I want to quickly show that.
Okay.
I think it's worth it. Because I really want to get, more into the umbilical idea.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what I can do here. All right, here we go. So
this was go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Go ahead.
It was just so synchronous that this was on your mind, because it is so correspondent. I have more and more appreciation for passageways and portals and thresholds and crossing over. Initiations are things you can't take back. And it's only the first one that's important. It's only the first step that's crucial.
I see.
And so all aspects of controlling these bottlenecks or these portals become increasingly magical. They become increasingly magical because they have more and more rarity. As they increase in rarity, they increase in value. So Ara is hiding out in the word America. They're constantly talking about changing America. The word, the constellation is altar. It's an altar. So the word change is invoking this table. Mm-hmm. And so now we have climate change. We have all the things with the plus sign on the back end of it. The plus and the multiplication is the symbol of change. So the loose change from the 9/11. This constellation is in the shape of the steel beams that were displayed in the movie Loose Change. So what I'm finding with this is, I think this is the blip. I think this is the Anthanos Fauci snap that is giving a command and a subliminal level for people to accept the Overton window of social engineering. But isn't this fascinating how it all lines up? And then Drake's Passage controls the climate. It turns out you research Drake's Passage and they call it a choke point. This Fool card is literally getting choked by this crook.
Right.
And then And then the
Wow.
ocean currents are said to spiral around all over the place. Well, that's the swirl that is in like an umbilical cord around this Fool card.
Wow, that's a good start to all the we're just getting started, folks. I mean, really, there's a good amount to get to here. Um, th- that's amazing. Okay. I think maybe I'll show this one. I was going to save it for the last one, but for the next one, but check this out, right? You were talking about Hydra, talking about Leviathan. Here is an overhead of the Panama Canal with all of its points. Take a look at the Hydra constellation. I mean, it's as close as it could possibly be. And this is just what we were showing with the Fool card. It's unbelievable.
Actually, are you able to flip it? That does
I don't know
fit.
if I
That
can
does
flip it
fit
here.
really well.
I can't flip it in here.
I found
I
it.
could, but it would take me a minute.
Okay. Yeah, it fits so well, man. Look at
What
that.
with like Panama and the overhead of North and South America? Yeah, that's incredible, man. It's crazy.
And so Hydra, of course, it's a very long constellation. It runs through the fall. It bridges the fall equinox, but and it is approaching Hercules in his station where he is. It's like leading right up to him. But the Hercules slaying the Hydra is one of his accomplishments, one of his labors.
Oh,
And the name of the labor is like there's a name of the Hydra. It's like the Leonian Hydra, maybe.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that rings a bell.
Because it's so close to Leo too. But that whole labor is an anagram for learn the Enneagram.
Wow. Man.
The Leonian Hydra is
right. You had
because I learned that the word Hydra and the word gram are almost basically the same gematological phrase.
Right.
Yeah. So this, I think that yes, there it is. Learn Enneagram. I am finding Enneagram all over the place, including Argentina. The word Argentina is tangerine.
Right.
An anagram for tangerine, but it's also Enneagrat. It's like one letter off from Enneagram. It's pretty fun.
And then we were discussing those rat lines, and Argentina is the most famous one, obviously. I mean, it was even a joke in Yellow Submarine, the Argentina joke about it. Hitler. Who knows where these things pop up? But a lot more of that's been popping up lately too. And speaking of Austria and Germany, you mentioned the Mozart of the sea, or what did you say? The Mozart of what? De Groot. What was he? The Mozart of
international law.
Of international
law.
Right? Well, what could be more deceiving than that crap, right? So, and we're keeping the language light here, folks. But Mozart, I think, now, yes, genius, child prodigy, kind of enslaved by his father to be the thing that Michael Jackson was. Fine, whatever. I'm not going to deny or anything like that. But he was a Freemason. He definitely had some very interesting ideas in how he wrote his operas. But he was a big deceiver, because how often are we finding, and I'm sure you've had this problem, a book is completely written in Latin by someone who grew up in Germany, and it's just hiding things for all these educated people to be able to read. He wrote operas in Latin and German and French, and Latinized German. Incredible. That's deception. If you don't know, how would you know? Why would somebody in Germany write an opera in Italian if most people can't even take it for what it is, right? So I thought, when you said the Mozart of that, I was thinking deception all the way, right? That's just like the first thing that came to mind. And you know what? I think we're getting close to maybe what would be the first half. So why don't we flash the Panama flag and this other alternate flag that just is crazy looking, and I think everyone at home will agree. Here is the actual Panama flag, right? And the other flag has this idea also, where there's kind of an A, B, masculine, feminine, ninth day. It's the two oceans on the either side of Panama. That's the whole idea of this here, right? But does this invoke any other ideas for you before I show that other flag, which is 10 times crazier?
It is definitely comporting to the empirical color standards with the red, white, and blue.
Red and blue, yep.
Or imperial. I always get
Yeah.
those confused. I think yeah, imperial. Um, I learned recently that red, green, and white
Hmm.
are actually Mithraic.
Oh, really?
So there is kind of like a occulted tension in the color codes. Um, but yeah, this definitely kind of has that Dutch uh, India Trading Company uh, flavor.
Absolutely.
Not rebellious.
No.
Definitely the conformers on this one.
Oh, certainly. I'm sure this was not their very first idea for a flag when, if they ever wanted one.
Yes,
Like, you don't have to have a
yes,
flag, right? There's like everyone's team, the world sports team, and here it is. So then there was this other one that it's right on the Panama flag. If you look up Panama flag, you'll find it, and it kind of made things a little crazier for me. I might be cut off the bottom a little bit. It has 13, just like just like us, but
okay,
this what could be taken so many different ways. It's supposed to be, again, the two oceans and how they meet now because of the canal, right? But I mean, I'm seeing zygotes, I'm seeing all kinds of stuff, right? What's the first thing that comes to mind here, man? Because this flag is nuts, dude. Also, the red yellow here is Colombia and Spain being represented, by the way.
yes, yes. Um, okay, okay. The one thing will be, you guys, have you seen the cannonball that is actually two cannonballs chained together?
Oh yeah, yeah,
It's a it's a type of cannonball that actually is designed so that that the chain rips things like a saw. It's like
yeah,
a flying saw.
like a clothesline. Okay,
Yes.
yeah.
Yep. And so with that in mind, let's consider the idea of a Gnostic breakaway sect of like, oh, right, you thought Jesus died. Well, we believe he had a twin brother that survived,
Mhm.
or he did a blowfish sedation spell, so he looked dead on the cross. They pulled down a living man, and he went on to France, and we have the bloodline of France over here.
Right.
So this is the twin brother. This is the
Hmm.
Gospel of Thomas. Thomas literally means twin. So we have like you guys got your Jesus over here, but we're preserving this second branching or even the word twig is actually a grafting or a cloning from the family tree.
Mhm.
But
Right,
the
right.
reason I'm saying that in relation to canon is because that's canon. The Bible is
The
the
canon.
canon, the canon of the story.
Wow.
But the
Wow.
coloration of the stripes being yellow and red, that is all Spain.
Yeah.
That is like Spain, Spain, Spain. It's crying out with Spain. And now, this is a real Gnostic nugget that people can use for their own benefit going forward. Is the crown of espinas. The word thorns is espinas, and the word espina is the word Spain. So he
Wow.
is wearing a crown of Spain.
Crown of Spain. Corona de Spain.
Yes, it's so there is a theory that I really love that has a lot to do with Barcelona as an
Hmm.
actual location of a New Testament event. It may have had more to do with rebel. It had more to do with the Crusades than we like to
Hmm.
think about. It's a very traumatic dichotomy of the fate of man around the Crusades that happened in Spain. I don't want to make any claims, man, but I think there's some renegade agency in Barcelona that caused a toppling of a world system, and we're not supposed to think about that mark in history. We're not allowed
Right.
to think about it. It's like muddied beyond reason.
Yeah.
But I think that Barcelona was actually where New Testament events happened in some way, shape, or form, way
Right.
more recently than we're told, and they're pushing
Wow.
things back so far in the past that it's a unreasonable psychic ask that you feel like you're taking a leap of faith to think it was 2000 years ago, when in fact some of what happened in Spain that kicked off those crusades, man, was way more recently and is way more important because we're still dealing with the treaties and the fallout from the prize law from those
Right.
crusades.
From the prize log. Way to bring it around, man. Wow. Oh my God. Uh, I I think. we've already branched off into so many different things. And while once or twice we might have kind of been a little tangential, we overall, this is all because of we're talking about the Panama Canal. It's incredible. And we really didn't even get into what it originally inspired me to even want to do this. So I'm looking forward to that. We've got lots of little nuggets for you guys. Going to be relating the cross section of female anatomy, a uterus, all kinds of other things that just completely line up with the maps of the Panama Canal. And I wonder where we'll go. There's a small outline here, sure, but there's more to it, man. I guess maybe we can end with this because your expertise on this is essentially second to none. The Enneagram, if you look at it a certain way, the Enneagram has that opening at the bottom, right? And I can almost imagine, ships going into it. And I wonder if we can somehow pull it off inside the Panama Canal itself or Panama. Because again, the impetus for this episode was that North and South America were severed. The umbilical cord was cut, much like modern science just wants you to do right away. Meanwhile, you can leave that thing on for as long as it goes until it comes off. And I do, coming back to one of the very first things you said with the essential rivers flowing through the umbilical cord, right, from the placenta to the baby. One of my favorite little tiny books that he calls a little pamphlet, Manly P. Hall, had The Occult Anatomy of Man, which I certainly suggest. And he's got more than that, but this is a little one that's a nice quick read. Much like my new book, as a matter of fact, a nice quick read that's dense yet quick. He mentioned how some of the biblical terminology and some of the rivers are reference to, how many types of fluids come in and out of the umbilical cord. And I know we didn't talk about this actually. You had been discussing on a show that me and my wife have both been on, and you're on all the time, the Bush Whisperer Roundtable, where some incredible things come out in a very long form topic show. You had mentioned the concept of inheritance and how a lot of that is stolen from us in the modern medical system regarding birth. This is one of the many reasons my wife is training to be a real good old-fashioned midwife, and I am so proud. But I'm hoping we can touch on that in the second half here, because severing that cord, doing whatever men feel like doing in this area, that can really steal some inheritance from the land that is not getting half the credit that it needs to. Just the United States alone is hiding a lot of things, and people are really starting to figure it out. And it's very exciting. Yeah. It's all very exciting.
Yep. Yeah, buddy. So I believe that this placental estate, the full treasure, is the keystone. And I think this literally closes the divide, the corpus callosum. I think that there is a whole nother level of sensory perception that goes to places undiscovered by us. And I think the placenta is the key to that, to closing the gap. And some people might even think of this as the Ubermensch. Right. This is like the Nietzschean Ubermensch. The placental twin is your big brother.
Right.
And these things are intentionally vilified. This is why the word German means hermanos. Mm-hmm. And even so the placental twin is intentionally vilified. And I have a lot of fun, kind of wiggling people out of these stigmas and these trigger terms.
Me too.
But I want to share. You nailed it with the shape of the Enneagram having that gap, and that gap having to do with the Panama Canal. In my assessment on the Enneagram, that's the 5 to the 4 gap. That is a spark gap of inspiration. That's where love comes through. Love and the code comes through that gate. Can you pull up that last one I sent you, and we'll kind of tease people for the. This is not related to our project. This is like a kind of a brainstorm of all things Pegasus. In my assessment, the Millennium Falcon is a Pegasus constellation. And the more I work with it, the more I realize that the Enneagram was in the Millennium Falcon all along. And the Millennium Falcon is a docking vessel. It's designed. That gap in the Millennium Falcon is exactly what you were just suggesting, George.
Oh,
You
right.
you suggested that the gap in the Enneagram has to do with the Panama Canal, and I'm telling you that in the Millennium Falcon, that gap is signified by its purpose, its cause, its special purpose. Like,
Wow.
And so I think it's very fascinating that the fate of the Millennium Falcon was correspondent to what the Panama Canal is doing for humanity. And that becomes a touchstone. That becomes a cultural nexus point where we can all see eye to eye or touch on this metaphor and have common ground for the shared experience of the realm. So, yeah, the Millennium Falcon is totally the Enneagram, and you nailed it with that the Panama Canal correspondence as it brings in the shipping container into birth. The shipping container into birth. I think most of people here know all of the birth metaphors of this sacred system. But yeah, we'll flesh it out in the next one on the next side.
So. I do. Yeah, I think we will. And I'll leave it with the placenta, as we thankfully had a really lovely doula and midwife with our last child and the one before, and we had our placenta made into, they put it out, and then you get the imprint of this what looks like a world tree. It's unbelievable. And
awesome.
I mean, it says a lot. And I have my ideas about what country may be a placenta. Maybe somebody already guessed it by just watching, but we got a lot more to go on this one. And I really hope you guys find us at Rockfin or Patreon. That's where the next part of this episode will be. Your insights are unbelievable. And I'm just so honored to know you. And I think that we really have some amazing conversations just for fun on the side, and seeing what you've been posting in your Telegram groups, the videos you've been putting out, and every time you're on INNERVERSE, it's just unreal. So please let people know where they can find you, where they can support you, anything, whatever you have.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so kindly. Slick Dissident is my YouTube channel name. I also, as you mentioned, I'm down with Chance over on the INNERVERSE. You can also find me with Zaralath. He and I are going to get down here pretty soon. We're going to do a little side Loki thing. He wants to represent his Norse clique. So yeah, you'll see me on Zaralath, and I also still get down with Juan every once in a while. He's been pretty busy lately, but I get down with Juan, and I should flash his Occultus Mundi. People should check out One-on-One's Occultus Mundi magazine. If people start bugging him about it, then he'll get off his ass and make the next issue. Yeah. So that's a good one to push too. So yeah, much appreciation. It is such an honor to be here. I'm so glad that you invited me, my friend.
Yes, of course. And thank you, everyone, for watching. I think, this channel's got some pretty exciting stuff coming, and the audience is growing. I'm finally on all podcasting sites. I'm on Rumble. I've kind of gotten to all the places that I've meant to all this time, and the Rockfin is growing too. And YouTube it's getting dicey. I mean, things happen. Lose views, lose things. It's tough. You get shadow banned pretty easily, and I think that there's a good community on Rockfin. So find me there. Find me on Patreon. I've got a Teespring shop with all kinds of fun merch. A 10% sale for the rest of the year, and I have my brand new book. If there's anything I highly suggest of my own, it wouldn't be this coffee mug. The coffee mug's great. The puzzle's great. Whatever. This book is the ethos of what I have for this show, all kind of wrapped up into one thing. And I really want to actually change lives just by having someone read it, no matter where you are in your studies or if you're just there or you're not. I have my thoughts about Lucasfilms and stuff of that nature, but I do recall when they were about to cast him in iron. What did they do to Han Solo? I forgot. They turned him into onyx. What did they turn him into?
Carbonite,
right. And then she says, "I love you," right? And he's like, "I know." Like, and yeah, right. Right. And it's almost as if she finally became enlightened, and he's been totally enlightened all along. My point is, her or him would get a lot out of this book. That's my point. So thank you so much, everybody. We'll catch you on the flip side at Rockfin or Patreon. Talk to you soon.